Hello everyone, my name is An.
And my name is Yeji, and this is Our Own Canon.
We created this show as a way for us to discuss and debate pieces of art, literature, philosophy, television, film.
Basically, anything and everything that has left an impression on us as Asian American college-age nerds with social anxiety and affinity for Vietnamese iced coffee.
Nerds, which we absolutely are, so get prepared to get lost in the weeds.
But don't worry, we'll offset with enough irony and sarcassery to keep things not boring for y'all.
And of course, thank you for listening and supporting the show. We hope you love what we have prepared today.
So we're finally here after 2 weeks of discussing, talking about, editing Rent a Girlfriend, and I'm finally free of that show, and I don't have to talk about it.
No, you're not,
anymore.
because you're gonna have to post it sometime, a couple weeks from now, and you're gonna have to make a post about it and think about it again.
Please.
So we're not through with it yet.
I just want it to be over. Well, okay. I guess it's somewhat over because today we don't really have to think about it because we have a much better movie to talk about. Today we're going to be discussing one of our top picks, Big Hero 6, which is by far one of my favorite Disney movies of all time. I think that they really outdid themselves with this one. But Odd and I have never actually talked about this movie, even though we both really love it and we both have really fond memories of it. So this will be a pretty fresh conversation, and you guys will sort of get to hear us have the conversations that we normally have before we actually get to putting something to the podcast. So this will be slightly impromptu, but I'm really excited about it.
Me too. This is genuinely such a fond core memory for me in this movie. I remember watching with my family, and aside from all the great things that we'll just talk about later about the technical elements and the storytelling and whatnot, just being a part of my childhood in that way makes it definitely really cool and really close to my heart.
No, for sure. Close to my heart is the perfect way to describe the vibes of this movie as a whole as well. But I am going to do what I did to you and Always Be My Maybe, and I'm going to ask you to summarize the movie because I think it's really funny when you try to do this because you're really bad at it.
You guys, I want you to know she sprung this on me, okay? We didn't talk about this. She's setting me up for failure here. That's what it is.
On the spot, okay?
Okay.
You don't have a choice.
Okay. I don't have a choice, and I do imagine it's entertaining for everyone except me. So we'll go for it. Okay. Big Hero 6 summary. So we start the movie with our main character, Hero. That's his name, right? I'm getting these names right? I'm getting these names right.
Yes, that's his name.
Okay. We start this movie off with our main character, Hero, and he is a child, probably a teenager, I'm guessing.
Thank you.
Probably
very informative. Yes.
I think I'm pretty sure because it's that scene later with Baymax where you're talking about him going through puberty. So he has to be around 13. So inferencing, and he is, and we introduce him in a bot fighting arena, which is a gambling den where people gamble on people fighting bots. So it's I guess dog fighting, but not as bad.
You're making it seem like people are fighting the robots. It's robots fighting robots.
Oh man, I wish it was people fighting the robots. That's a different movie and a very entertaining movie.
Well, I guess people do kind of fight robots in this movie as well. But okay, so
but not
Hero is a bot fighter and he is a gambler. And what else?
And a hustler.
Okay.
So
he's getting that bag.
So yeah. So this movie's trying to code him as a very smart kid because not only did he build this robot who just completely won the bot fight, but he also managed to hustle the bot fighters. But he's also really smart in that like technical sense, but not smart in the sense of like this is going to get you in a lot of trouble and possibly killed sense, um, as these nerds are.
Lovely.
uh, so he gets like people get not too happy with him for hustling them and playing a fool and then switching it up on him when his bot actually does win. And he's about to get like murdered. Uh,
I don't know about murdered. He's gonna get beat up, and he's probably gonna get his
he's
money
probably gonna
stolen
get
back.
beat up,
Yeah.
but like there's a chance he's about to get. Okay,
On, are
you're
we
probably right.
sure that you watched the same movie? Are we sure that you watched Big Hero 6 and not something else?
See, this is gonna happen every time you ask me to do a
This
summary.
is
You're gonna wonder if I watched it or not, but I swear I did. I've watched this movie several times,
his
actually.
interpretations are very interesting, y'all. I'm sorry, but okay, continue. So
All right, wait, but you're the one in the Superman episode who was like, the dude got knocked out when he very clearly was strangled to death. So whose
okay,
interpretation
listen to me.
is actually
Listen,
funky here?
listen. I don't know who our audience is. I don't know. They could be young people, and I don't want to just like traumatize our younger audience by saying like that guy straight up got fucked. Like that's
I feel like we may have passed the point of having a family friendly audience when we did Rent a Girlfriend. Like it just might be
and
over
whose
already.
fault
Like
is that?
there's no there was a specific discussion in that episode about how the show itself is not family friendly. I would say by implication that also means our podcast is officially not family friendly. Sorry, that's just how it is.
Okay, well, to our viewers, I apologize. This is not a family-friendly show, and apparently, Big Hero 6 is about murder and and people fighting robots and violence. So
It kind
I
of
will
is
low
though.
key help a little bit because I feel like the ensuing events need a little bit of like glossing over, because for the people who haven't seen this movie, I still want to leave it somewhat in the dark for you. There's going to be tons of spoilers about the movie, obviously, in this episode, but like, I don't want to tell you every single little minute detail that's happening, unlike On, who is not very good at his job. So, um, so basically,
Is it a job if you constantly are volunteered for it? Like that's just not a job anymore. That's getting volunteered for
okay, On,
something.
there was a sign at the door that said, "Leave your philosophy here." So let's do that.
It, actually, no. Though, have you not listened to the intro to this podcast? Actually, you're like actually no.
I regret everything. Okay, so Hiro he's about to get beat up from this bot fight, and then his brother intervenes, and his brother's name is Tadashi, and he's a college kid, he's older, and he basically obviously saves Hiro from this tight spot, and then and throughout their interactions, it's very clear that while Hiro cares very much about his brother and respects his opinion and obviously wants, his brother's respect, there is a very rebellious streak for him going on here where he isn't really sure what he wants to do with his life, and he is too smart to be anywhere where he will truly fit in. And he sort of has, again, like the superiority complex about being very smart in that he thinks his intelligence makes him invincible, which is something that we see in the bot fight, right? Where he's like, oh, my bot won, and that means I just won the money, and then I can just go home. Not realizing that there are obviously further consequences there that he hasn't even considered, including his safety, right? And so with Tadashi, it's sort of like we see this his older brother and their parents are dead. Classic Disney movie setup. I don't know. Like, for some reason, I appreciated that they stuck with their guns on the dead parent thing for this movie, because I feel like they could have very easily made it like the overbearing Asian parent trope, but instead they were like, nah, like, these kids are Disney heroes. They need to have dead parents. So yeah, they have dead parents, and Tadashi tries to sort of step up as, Hiro's parental figure because he's the older brother, but Hiro sort of rejects that and doesn't really accept it. And then, interestingly enough, one of the first scenes is Hiro getting dragged to Tadashi's college and he meets all of his friends. And this is sort of where I want to take like a second to ask you on how did you feel about the nerd school scene? Did you like,
Man, I thought it was like so awesome
uh
in like
huh,
that idealistic way of like what college
uh
could
huh,
be.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Because like it's just a bunch of nerds doing research on like the things that they find
Mm hmm,
interesting, which I feel like is the pitch of what college should
mm
be,
hmm,
but doesn't always particularly shake out to
mm
be.
hmm,
It does feel like college is a lot more about getting your classes and like getting your grades and then getting your degree and then getting out.
yeah,
And I just feel kind of jealous, and I'm just like these nerds just get to
mm
like
hmm,
build things, and they're like supplied the
mm
materials to
hmm,
build these things because they want to,
mm
and
hmm.
like if
Yeah,
only.
no, legitimately. I think it was very interesting for them to take the route of showing, and this the setting of the world is like futuristic. It's a city called San Francisco, which is a combination of San Francisco and Tokyo. So it's sort of this very utopian, sort of idealized world, very high tech, but yet still recognizable as something that we sort of, settings that we know and love as well, which I thought was actually really interesting, because I love the setting of the movie. I think the set design of the movie and the way that they created the world and the world building around it was fascinating, and I think they did it very, very, very well. Very good example of very subtle integration of modern things with futuristic things. But yeah, no, the nerd school scene was just me like fangirling over everybody's inventions basically the entire time. Like, and it's very clear too, that these kids they're in it because they love it. They're in it because they want to do it and they are passionate about it. And all of them have a sort of specialty. So we have a few other side characters that are coming in. So we have Gogo, who is also an Asian American young woman. Hiro and Tadashi. And she is sort of this like rough puff mechanic kind of thing where she likes building fast things and super tough, very rough exterior, and her catchphrase is woman up, which is just badass. I fucking love it. I'm obsessed with
It's
her.
very subtle too. Like they don't make a big point about it. It just kind of
It's
just
just
like
something
throws
that
it
she
in there,
like,
and it's like
yeah,
okay,
it's
yeah,
just something she throws out
yeah.
there, and it's awesome. And I had the biggest crush on her for the longest time. And then we have Honey Lemon, who is she's Latina, and she is like a chemistry major of some sort, but she's really into like making these. Okay, yeah, I don't know if this is a child friendly movie. She likes making big balls with chemicals, and I regret everything. I regret everything.
That's all on you. It didn't have to be that way. You are the one who made it that way.
But she specializes in something called chemical metal embrittlement, which was really, really cool. And then we have Wasabi, who is, oh God, like he just makes lasers. He makes really cool lasers. Am I doing a bad job at explaining this? Am I becoming you?
I think I think you got it. I think this is accurate.
Okay. Please tell me if I'm like off
To
base with
to
any
be
of these
fair,
things.
Honey Lemon's whole thing genuinely doesn't make sense if you think about it from like it only makes sense if you think about it as an adaptation of the comics because it actually kind of just makes no sense on its own,
That
frankly.
is true. Her power is very interesting, and it's not really even a power. And like her weapon is really cool, which we'll get into the weapons and stuff later, but like all of their academic specialties like feed into their weapons later, which I thought was really, really cool and is honestly like really good symbolism. But Wasabi he makes these like really cool thin lasers that you can't really see. And he's kind of like an OCD, very organized person. And then there's Fred. And Fred is he's just there. He just exists with the group.
He's the
He's the
mascot.
mascot.
Literally the mascot.
But he's not a very good mascot, I will say. I think that he's just there. He just exists there. The biggest plot twist in the movie is when we find out that he's actually like super rich and lives in this like huge
Yeah, he
mansion.
looks like he looks like he'd be a stoner. and
Honestly,
then you find out that he's actually living in a
he
mansion and is
probably
very
is a
rich, and
stoner. Let's be completely real with you.
he
Like,
probably
yes,
is a
yes, he
stoner.
probably is. And then Hiro and Tadashi are now sort of part of this group just by existing in the same space with them for a little bit. Like all of Tadashi's friends sort of accept him and they're like, look at all the cool stuff that I can do. And it's really, really cool. And it's a really good way to introduce different characters is by having one of your actual characters be introduced to your new characters. So I really appreciated that. But who was your favorite side character on?
My favorite side character? Man, I kind of love them all, but I think Wasabi's probably my favorite side character. He
Mm,
was just
yeah.
fun. I liked his like I liked his like duality of like wanting to be a hero and like trying to do all like the heroic stuff, but also just like being kind of scared at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, which is relatable.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that. He's out of all the nerds, he's also probably the nerdiest nerd that I can relate to
No,
here.
for sure. I really like Wasabi too. I think that there is something really relatable about being courageous, but also in like a very nervous way. It's as someone with anxiety, it was very heartening to see him be like, "No, I'll do it, but like I'm not gonna have a fun time." And I think that that's like how I do everything, and it was awesome. I really liked Go-Go, but something that I thought was really, really interesting was the way that they depicted Honey Lemon as a Latina woman, because I feel like I don't see a lot of Latina women depicted the way that Honey Lemon is in this movie, and I just thought it was really, really cool and sort of a
I feel
subtle.
like we don't see a lot of like characters in general of like their races depicted the way that they are in this movie for like all of the side
Yeah,
characters.
yeah, which I think is very. It's fascinating to me that like a lot of American television shows, because there's that trope, right, of like the Asian guy is the nerd, but every single time I've seen an American television show, the nerd is never Asian. The doctor is never Asian. For some reason, I don't know if that's like, I don't know if you've noticed that, but every time there's a nerd character, I'm like, why? What's going on? I don't know if that's a more modern thing, and I don't know if that's because I just don't watch a lot of American television, but the fact that there was only one Asian character in the entirety of Grey's Anatomy is very unlikely. You know what I mean? Like,
But also, Grey's Anatomy, like from a realism standpoint, never mates.
maybe not, but also, yeah, that was the most unrealistic thing about the entire show. It wasn't, the medical stuff or anything like that. It was the fact that Christina, I think her name is the only Asian doctor like in that entire hospital. um,
I don't know. I think there are a lot of like Asian nerd characters in like media and things like that. I think the distinction is if they're a cool nerd, it's usually not Asian. But if they're
that's
like
fair.
a weird nerd, then they tend to be
A
Asian.
weird nerd.
Or Urkel.
Or Urkel. Yes, that's true. I don't know. I feel like I need to watch more American television to get a better grasp on it and things, but I more see Asian media, American media representing Asians as like if they're nerds, they're not nerds about particularly intelligent things. They're nerds about different kinds of media or weird, strange, niche things that are, not very well known. If that makes any sense. Or gamer. Every time there's a gamer, he's Asian. He or she is Asian. Like every time.
Well, to be fair, Asians dominate a lot of the esports
That
right
is
now,
true,
so
but
that is true.
I don't know. I
Congratulations on Korea for winning League of Legends Worlds again.
again. I don't. Okay, I need to. We need to talk about League because
Do
I
we?
don't know anything about it. Like, you need to educate me.
Okay,
Okay.
maybe on a different
Yes, on a
episode.
different episode. We're getting
But this
so
is Big Hero
sidetracked.
6
Oh my
Day.
god, we're getting so
And
sidetracked.
all of my friends who play League are getting whiplash right now because they came here for something else and we just roped it back in, and I feel bad for them now. You know who you are.
I'm so sorry, everyone. We're gonna
No.
get back to our regular messaging. Thank you. So, Big Hero 6 movie. So, we meet the side characters, and then Hero gives this big presentation about microbots, and because he wants to start going to college, basically meeting his friends and meeting Tadashi's friends and getting to see everybody do what they were passionate about is something that he decided now that he wants to do, now that he's seen it firsthand. So he decides to put a presentation together so that the professor will admit him into the school. And in the intervening time between he makes that decision as well, he also meets Baymax, which is his brother's personal project. And Baymax is a personal healthcare companion that is a robot, and he is adorable, and he's shaped like a marshmallow, and he's very huggable and cuddly, and I don't know
See,
what
you,
else to
you
say
know
about
why
that.
I know that Baymax could never be invented in America? He
Why?
doesn't ask enough about insurance. It's just like you say ow and then he activates and then he like goes treats you. Like let's be honest here.
Yeah, he just, and then like when you're done, he just deactivates and he doesn't ask you for your like credit card information or your PIN number. Yeah, that's pretty, that's bullshit. That's, yeah, not in America, never. Um so Tadashi is obviously being set up as a character who cares very, very deeply about other people, and Baymax is basically like the tangible reflection of that. He is the personable, caring nature of Tadashi personified into this robot, basically. And, Hiro messes around with him, and then he decides that he wants to go to the college, and he makes his presentation about his microbots. And then the building that he made his presentation in catches fire very, very quickly. And that is the night that he loses his big brother, because Tadashi goes into the building, runs into the burning building to save people, and then we lose him. And I swear to Christ, every time I see that scene, I cry my fucking eyes out because it's really, really hard.
A valid response.
I
Yeah.
also read a really great think piece about this show as well, and there were apparently a lot of people who thought it was very selfish of Tadashi to run into the burning building, considering that, like, he basically knew that if he had made that decision, it would leave his brother alone because he knows that their parents are dead and that technically that's the only family he has left, and like he still does it. And I never thought of it that way, but it's really difficult now to like not consider that whenever I watch the movie again. It's like I don't want to be mad at Tadashi, but also like, damn, dude, you ran into a burning building and left your little brother all by himself. And it's really hard to think about, but I was wondering what you thought about that and like if you think that's a valid opinion or not.
I haven't thought about it as much as you, but I don't feel as strongly compelled by that argument.
Mm,
Because one, like, I don't think he expected to die. I think he knew he was taking a risk, but I don't think it's like a 100% like thing, right?
mm-hmm.
Um and also like in the heat of the moment, I don't imagine he's making like particularly great calculations. He knows that there are people that need help,
Mm-hmm.
and that he may be able to help. Maybe like if you froze time and then like went through like the calculations of it, right? Maybe you could
Mm-hmm.
come to the conclusion that he should not have run in there because his brother needs him.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but that's not the type of situation he was in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was doing things with the best intentions that he could have. And of course, people with good intentions can do bad things,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I would not hold him like morally culpable for that.
Mm.
Maybe it wasn't the right decision, but I don't particularly think he was making like the wrong decision, if that makes
Mm.
sense. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
like from a third observer position, maybe he was making the wrong decision, but from his
Mm-hmm.
perspective, I think he was making the best decision he could with the limited amount of information, limited amount of time.
Mm-hmm. I do think that his last line is very reflective of what exactly what you're saying, right? Hiro, grabs his arm and like holds him back, and he's like, "Tadashi, please," and Tadashi goes, like there are people, Callahan's in there, somebody has to help, and Callahan is there, is his professor, which that was also revealed a little bit earlier when all the character introductions was sort of happening. He meets Callahan at the university, and Callahan is one of the people who influenced him to make that presentation and try for getting into college. And so it's a really tough scene overall, and the next time that we see Hero, he is basically fully
Right.
steeped in his.
Could I add
Yes.
something to that?
Yes,
I also
please.
think trying to like approach like text from exclusively like philosophical moral stances and stuff like that, it's
Mhm.
not always going to be the best decision,
Mhm.
because like pieces of art, they need to kind of be pieces of art before they are like moral text or anything, right? Like if
Mhm.
you wanted to read a moral text, you can go read Kant.
Mhm.
I mean, I wouldn't suggest it, but you could. I'm kidding.
It might not be a
Uh,
pleasant experience, but you absolutely can.
yeah, you can. But it's trying to do something else. It's not trying to make moral statements as much as it's trying to paint Tadashi in a particular way and
Mhm.
move the plot in a particular way, right? And like
Mhm.
in that way, you can kind of like lose some of the thinking about like Tadashi's actions and just
Mhm.
kind of accept that this is a story thing in service of the story first,
Mhm.
right? Where it's accomplishing a lot of things in this one scene, right? It's accomplishing that Tadashi's this type of person, right? But it's also like moving the plot forward by like killing him,
Mm.
right?
Yes, that was very
It's trying to do
delicately
something else,
put.
and that's not more morals.
Yeah. No, I think that it's a hard situation overall because we know how death affects people in general. And so
Hmm.
we already see that Hiro has had a very hard life and that it's affected him very greatly, and then we see him obviously struggling with Tadashi's death after, and it's just like, man, this kid can't catch a freaking break. And yeah, like as I was saying a little bit before, like the next time that we actually see him, he is like fully steeped in his depression, and he no longer wants to go to college. He no longer has any motivation to do anything or be anyone because the one person who was still encouraging him to keep going is gone now. And that's so sad. And I think that like Disney really pulled out all the all the sad stops for this particular movie because I'm not going to lie, like I also think that it's a very good representation of depression in general. Um and this is something that I did want to ask you too a little bit about as well, but as for someone who is mentally ill, at least like a little bit, here and there, it's always very heartening to see when writers, animators, media in general goes out of its way to portray mental illness in a respectful and a true way. And it's very subtle, but Aunt May, who is the Aunt May, is it May? Yes,
Is it?
yes. Am I thinking of Spider Man? I think it's
You
Aunt
might be
May.
thinking of Spider-Man.
No, it has. No, hang on. But the next time that we see him, she comes upstairs to his room, and Aunt Cass. I was thinking of freaking Spider Man. Aunt
Spider-Man.
Cass. I'm so sorry, everyone. I promise I did watch this movie. So Aunt Cass comes upstairs and she's basically like clearing his empty plates and stuff, and he hasn't touched his food and he's not eating, and his, blinds are drawn, and she's trying to open the blinds, and she brings him new food, and she's still encouraging him to go to college, and it's just this it's just this vicious cycle of where he's sort of like, yeah, I'll think about it, and then never actually does. It is really really hard. But how did you feel about that particular scene, and do you think that it is a true reflection of how people go through loss? And yeah, like how did Tadashi's death make you feel? On We're in therapy mode right now.
Sad. Sad. It made me feel sad. The whole scene was just rough. I can't particularly say I've been through like a loss like that, so I can't relate to that type of thing.
Mm.
Um, but it was very effective at getting what it needed to across in
Mm-hmm.
in really making you feel his pain to the best of the movie's ability.
Mm. Yeah. So we're sad, and it's sad, and then Hero drops something on his foot, and he says, "Ow!" And Baymax activates. And what follows is the most wholesome freaking thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And Baymax is basically back in the picture, and this is sort of where he becomes truly a character. I also want to know. So I saw a media analysis again on this movie where it talks about how the thing that's so effective about Baymax is that he is like 100% truly a robot. Um, and I'm wondering if you think that that's true, because there are robots that are coded to be more human and more, they're supposed to be. They're basically humans, right? But with like metal exoskeletons. So do you think that Maybach is fully robot, or do you think there's elements in him that are like human? And where do you think those come from?
I mean, his personality is pretty, I think, human at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he like makes decisions and things like that. At the end of the movie, like jumping ahead, I guess a bit, like he makes the decision to like save like Hero, and I guess you can chalk that up to programming. But I can't particularly agree that he feels like more robot than like other robots. All right,
Mm.
he does feel like he genuinely have his human elements. What I can say that I think might be more clever is that like I'm not saying I'm more clever than people. I'm saying it's clever that the movie did this. What I think the movie did very cleverly is that like it justifies a lot of his humanness, human actions, human like actions as part of his programming. Like he's programmed to be not only a caretaker but programmed to be friendly, and he's specifically designed to be friendly. That's why he looks like a giant fluffy marshmallow.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes a lot of his human things that he does end up feeling like it's part of the robot programming, and I guess that like in a way makes it feel more robot because he's always following his like programming directives,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas like some other robots are like a lot more human, but they're kind of a lot more human for like no discernible reason, right? Like why would someone program this robot to start acting like a human? Right, this doesn't make any sense. But in Baymax's case, it does make a lot of sense because like if you're trying to be like a caretaking robot, it would probably benefit the robot a lot
Mm-hmm.
to be friendly in this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also think that I do think Baymax airs more on the side of being again 100% robot. But I do think that the parts where that we see where we're like, well, maybe he isn't. Is it comes from the coding that Tadashi has done on him, and the human element of him is within Tadashi, and not just because like he is coded that way as you know what I mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
there was room for them to make Baymax a Tadashi, right? There was room to make Baymax a parental figure for Hero, but instead they become something entirely unique and different. And I think that only worked because Baymax was not coded to be human. I don't know if that makes any sense though. You know what I mean? Like
I think I do.
yeah, like he wasn't coded to be more on the human side and to err on the side of like, oh, this like is he's basically a stand-in for like a parent, like he is a robot. There's no changing that. But at the same time, like those subtle, more human elements that we do see from Baymax, I think are intentional and they do come from something within the story, and it's not just the author like showing their hand in making him that way.
Mm-hmm.
But for Hero, Baymax coming back to life it's a little bit tough for him. Like he isn't really sure how to react to it, and then Baymax sort of gets him into a little bit of hot water because he finds his microbot, one of the last ones that wasn't destroyed in the fire from the presentation. And they basically find out that someone has been mass producing microbots. And then this is where we find basically the main villain of the story. And it all goes downhill from here. So the main villain is semi-introduced. We at least sort of know that he is producing microbots, and then he starts attacking Hero and Baymax because he obviously doesn't want any witnesses to his plans, and that's when their friends get involved, which I thought was very interesting because Baymax basically diagnoses Hero with depression
Yeah.
from his brother's death and calls Hero's friends or Tadashi's friends to what is basically an active crime scene, and then they all get attacked at the same time, and then the most epic car chase of all time happens. And then this is also where we find out that Fred is like a rich megalomaniac, which is kind of cool. Um, and a lot is happening. I forget how
No good
densely
billionaires
packed.
except Fred.
Yes, there are no good billionaires except for Fred. Except for because he doesn't care that he's rich. That very very much shows. I do think it's interesting that they went that route with him because with movies that have again like superhero things, and obviously we've seen like Iron Man, and we see how eccentric billionaires sort of play very much into a role where like it play very much into a society that's built to be modern. And so the fact that Fred wears a ratty beanie and cargo pants and a long sleeve shirt under a t-shirt, right, looks
And it's
homeless
probably a stoner.
and probably a stoner, and then they make him a millionaire, and his house, sort of the base of operations, is just a really cool sort of subversion of that trope. Um, and they face down against the enemy several times, and they're trying to figure out who it is, and they think they have it pinned down. And then it is revealed instead that it was Professor Callahan the whole time.
Gasp.
Dun dun dun. Um, which was actually really tough because the last thing that Tadashi ever said was Callahan is in there, someone has to help, and to find out that Callahan is still alive is a gut punch as much to the audience as it is to Hiro, who he's not taking this very well. He flies into this kind of blind rage and he tells Baymax to kill Professor Callahan basically without a second thought. And oh gosh, this scene hit me so hard where he takes out Tadashi's medical chip and replaces it with like just the chip that he made. And Baymax becomes just this like ball of rage and he destroys. And that's some heavy fucking symbolism, and I want to hear what you thought about that. That part where he takes
Yeah.
out Tadashi's chip and
I think that scene in particular is like really goes goes really hard. And just like it's just the way that like he's kind of it symbolically like represents him like like losing touch of this caring part of him, right? It's kind of like Tadashi died a second time, right? uh
oh, don't say that to me. Ah,
you prodded this
I'm in
question.
pain.
You prodded this question, but that's genuinely how it kind of feels like, where it's like Tadashi's legacy was to like make a robot that like helps people, and finding out that Callahan was the one that ended up killing him kind of like felt like a very slap in the face of Tadashi's legacy, and that's kind of like how it's represented in Hero, like removing Tadashi's programming to only have the violent side of the programming, right? Um, and I think that's a really neat move. I'm explaining it, but it's one of those things where you just kind of had to feel it, Like I can explain it all you want, but um, it it really felt like Hiro was getting reminded of his brother's death again, and that I think that's the most like tragic part of it.
No, absolutely. And there were a lot of hard parts in this movie for sure. There's a lot of emotional stuff to unpack in here. And basically,
Should you run through
should I run
Callahan's
through Callahan? The reason Callahan did all
motivation?
of
Yeah.
this. Yes. So So who we thought it was the whole time was another gentleman who is like the eccentric millionaire archetype kind of thing, right? Like he sort of is like the Iron Man character, this man who it will
But like,
sacrifice
if
anything
Iron
for
Man wasn't a
progress.
hero,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. If Iron Man was just a straight up capitalist, which I think Iron Man is a straight up capitalist, there's nothing in his like there's nothing to dissuade us of that in particular, but he tends to be a little bit more careful with it, I guess. But oh my god, who is the guy that is what's his name? Let's see.
I mean, like, yeah,
Alistair Cray. That's his
Alistair
name.
Gray.
Alistair
You're right.
Cray. Alistair Cray is he doesn't yeah, he is very much errs on the side of progress at the expense of anything.
Yeah, we have like
And
that whole video that they find where he's
yeah.
testing out this new technology and he's trying to sell it to the to the military.
Yup.
And like Callahan comes in and is like, "Hey, like this thing is flawed and people are gonna get hurt." Uh, and like he and Alistair Cray is just like, "Get him out of here. We're gonna run this anyways." And they do, and things go badly. And Callahan's daughter uh disappears into the void.
So she was the one who was testing the new technology, and they were basically sending like a human in and trying to prove that like a human could go into the portal and come back out, and she doesn't come back out. And so Callahan's whole scheme with the microbots and everything was to basically open the portal again and suck everything that Alistair Cray ever cared about into the portal. He's basically already accepted that his daughter is dead at this point, but the moment that he opens the portal, Baymax can read that there is somebody alive inside of it. And so him and Hero go up into the portal and they save Abigail at the expense of leaving Baymax behind. Which I cry every time. I am always shattered. I know it's gonna happen, and then I cry anyways. And that scene is so sad. Ah,
Very sad.
it's very sad. And if you haven't watched this movie, go freaking watch it right now because it's so good. And at the end, it's happy. It's a happy ending because we find out that while Baymax saved them, he also sent with them a copy of the chip that Tadashi coded him with, and so Hero rebuilds Baymax, and they become Big Hero 6. And that's basically, I think, the summary of the story, and I think that's enough for people to sort of know what we're talking about as we go forward. But it's a great movie. It's a fantastic film, and it's animated very, very well. I loved the art style of it, and I think sort of like you know that like art style where people kind of look squishy? Like that's just a very good art style. I like that art style a lot.
To each their own, I guess.
I don't
that
know what
that
it
may
is
not have
about
been the
it.
way that I would have like explained it.
And no, they look like okay, fine, whatever.
It's got a
I
very
don't know how to
Disney. It's got
describe
a
anything.
very CG Disney art style to it.
It's yes,
I
it's
guess there's
very
no other way to
Disney.
put it
But also the
because it was made
people
by Disney. Go
like
figure.
the people look squishy. Like they have very squishy faces. Don't laugh at me. I can't.
Such an odd way to
I'm
put it.
getting
But okay.
bullied. Uh, good lord.
Okay. Okay.
Anyways,
So art style A+ according to Yeti.
yes, art style A+. Love the art style.
So what else? What else do we want to talk about as far as like themes or technical aspects, story? What's on your mind about this?
So
About this
there's
movie?
there I mean this movie has a plethora of topics that all just work really 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 well. There is such a subtle integration of culture and stylization in this movie that I think that Disney has sort of lost. At least within certain Marvel shows that I'm seeing right now, there's like this very weird thing where they're like, we need to be more culturally representative, and they never do it in the way that they've done it well. This is something that I noticed in Moon Knight a lot, where they're like trying to represent Egyptian culture, and the only thing that they're doing is like showing these weird pseudo animal human versions of their gods. And I'm like, I love y'all, but this is not cultural representation. This is just fantasy fulfillment, right? You want to do cultural integration. Big Hero 6 did cultural integration, right? First and foremost, with the combination of San Francisco and Tokyo, which is like, of all the places that they chose in the US, San Francisco was definitely the place to integrate with another culture because there already is so much culture integration within San Francisco just as a city. But by making it the sort of city hybrid with another culture that's very vastly different from the US, there's so much artistic and creative, like, I don't know, the aesthetic was it worked very, very well.
It worked very well.
It's,
I do think it helps that San Francisco also has a very strong Asian community there.
yeah, and I
So
do
integrating
think,
it with
yeah.
Tokyo is not like it felt like it could work because it kind of is working.
Yeah, no, no, no. It definitely is. Like I said, like I think that that was very purposeful on their part, and it works. It works very, very well. We see Hiro and Tadashi implied to be some. I think they are of mixed race. I think they're mostly Asian, but Aunt Cass is white, and so someone in their family married a white person.
His name is like Hiro Hamada, right?
Yeah,
Like that's pretty Asian. Like
yeah, but
even if it's not an actual Asian name, it sounds very Asian, right? So it's
it's
it's evocative
no, that's
of the
I
Asians.
think that's straight up Asian for sure. I think it was his mom that was white, unless Aunt Cass is the one that got married into the family. I'm not entirely sure, but Aunt Cass is white, and basically she's the one who's basically raising these boys, and her cafe that she owns, that we see, you know, bits and pieces of where they all live together, has a very like Asian esque cafe style to it. Like the outside of it is sort of stylized to have like an Asian roof, and there's like the lucky cats and everything in there. I'm pretty sure the cafe is called. Again, I want to make sure that I'm saying this right because I've gotten Aunt Cass wrong, so I want to make sure that I'm not messing this up. Yeah, it's called the Lucky Cat Cafe. The design of it on the outside is literally, it looks like a San Francisco home, like that very sort of long architecture that goes up, and then it has like an Asian roof on it. It's very cool. And so Aunt Cass owns this sort of like half Asian, half American, San Franciscoan cafe hybrid that is almost like a representation of her own family. Just the subtle, just this very subtle culture integration that just works very, very well because you're not shoving it down your audience's throat and being like, look at all this cool stuff we're doing. It's just like stuff that you see in the background that nobody ever actually talks about, but enriches the story that much more for sure. And
Yeah,
I just, yeah.
I feel like Big Hero 6 is like it's like it's this like it's this future that like you kind of like strive for, right? As far as like a diverse community, right? It's the future in which anyone can be any race, and that's just like a thing about them, right? And then they just do the things that interest them because they can, right? Um, and it doesn't get bogged down with like dealing with particular things about like modern day like race and all the things that complicate that stuff. It that and the college feel like a society in which we have moved past a lot of things, right? And actually have like a more idealized version, and we don't have to think about like these these things that like weigh down like representation and whatnot, you know. Which I think is cool. There's room for that. There's room for that. I think there's a lot of room for things that deal with our problems now, but there's also like this fun, idealistic way to look at things and be like, oh, how can this be when we do solve all these problems? I think that's what this movie is.
Yeah. And I don't know. I also saw this with his friends too and the other side characters. Like none of the other characters ever say what their race or ethnicity is. It's just kind of like there, and they
Yeah,
are
and
just humans that
they're very
exist.
much themselves,
Yes, for
right?
sure.
Before they're anything else.
Mhm.
I think the movie does a really good job of avoiding stereotypes with their characters.
Mhm.
Right? You don't normally see Asian characters depicted that way. You don't normally see Latina characters depicted that way. You don't normally see black characters depicted that way.
Mhm.
The movie really focuses on these characters as themselves first, and then just kind of
Mhm.
like adds the extra stuff, which just like it's nice.
Mhm. Can I also say that I love Wasabi's character design? I think that so often people are like, "Oh, like nerds are like scrawny and they're lanky and they're inside and they're pasty and they don't," and like the way that they designed Wasabi is like he looks like a bodybuilder and it's awesome. Like it's not like he's not like buff guff, right? But he has like he's built and he's stocky and he has sort of this the build of a fighter. Not that he's necessarily trained in fighting or that he does a lot of it in the movie, but like they didn't make everybody skinny and gaunt and like again that like sort of skinny guy gamer trope of like oh they don't really eat anything or like go out in the sun or anything like that, and I appreciated that. Again, I think that when you just draw from real life and you see how humans exist and then you put that into the media, it will always work. But if you make your characters as tools to tell a story, sometimes that doesn't always work in your favor. Sometimes it overshadows what the story needs to be. And Big Hero 6 is definitely a story that was enriched by all of these things but didn't need them. And by doing it silently, it was that much more effective than making the movie about
Yeah,
representation and things like that. Which
it wasn't
again,
patting
yeah.
itself on the back about
Yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is nice.
Yes. Real G's move in silence like lasagna. Okay.
What?
So I also want to know your stance on Disney as a whole. I feel like we haven't ever really talked about that, but a lot of people have a lot of problems with Disney, and I want to know if you have any.
Uh, do I? uh, I think what Disney has done to copyright is like the worst thing to happen to art. Well, okay,
Interesting.
there's a lot of bad things that have happened to art, but
Uh
I think this
huh.
is like a genuine, very bad thing that has happened to art because I think artistic like creation, there's this like kind of crazy idea about art in which it's like completely original and like artists make things that like only they have ever thought of. And that's not
Mm
true. Like the artistic community is very much influenced by people around them. Art is influenced by communities. That's why it's called an artistic community.
hmm. Mm hmm.
It's people biting off each other all the time,
Mm hmm.
right? And Disney and it's not just Disney, but a lot of other corporations have lobbied on copyright so hard that it is so hard to actually genuinely make new pieces of art with these properties, right?
Mm
Even though
hmm.
these properties like greatly influence the people growing up. I'm no animator, but I can totally imagine an animator who would want to animate something with Big Hero 6 but would never get the opportunity to,
Mm
or at least
hmm.
never get the opportunity to make money off of it,
Mm hmm.
because of like these copyright laws, which just fundamentally I don't think make any sense because like copyright's supposed to benefit the artist,
Mm
but
hmm.
a lot of these artists are like dead,
Mm hmm.
or not like or not even the ones who own these copyrights anymore. So it's not like
Mm
they're even making money off of it.
hmm.
And I think that's like genuinely very frustrating because we have to let artists be influenced by artists.
Mm, yeah. I agree with you for sure. I think that Disney
To be fair, it's
cap
not just Disney
oh,
who did
yes, but
this,
like
but
making art a capitalist venture will never end well. And I think a lot of artists do know that, but also like you need to pay the rent somehow, right? And so
yeah,
I will never ever call an artist like a sellout for working for a corporation like Disney because I think that you always have to work with what you're given, and like this is just how it is right now. And with Disney in particular, there are a lot of things wrong with their copyright, laws, but there's also something like deeply disturbing about the fact that they now own everything.
Your entire childhood.
No, but like the way that they own Star Wars and Marvel and Pixar and their own like entire like Marvel was a thing on its own for a while as well, and right now we're seeing a lot of integration with Marvel and DC, which means that Disney owns a piece of DC too now. And I'm wondering how it's just a matter of time basically before like the companies, maybe like even Warner Brothers, are bought out by Disney, and like we're just gonna live under a Disney media, and we like media can't be changed if it's all coming from one corporation that will dictate whether or not certain themes and certain things are in it. Like Disney's pretty fucking homophobic. So if every media corporation is owned by Disney, we're not going to see a lot of queer representation in those movies, you know? If it's something
Or
is
we'll get it, but it's gonna be
or it's going to
like
be
3
bad.
frames,
Uh
and they're gonna pat themselves on the back about it,
it's going to be
and that's just it.
yeah.
And they'll be like, technically, we got you guys.
Technically we did our job, and I don't know. Yeah,
You
it's
blinked and you missed it. That's what happened. Sorry.
yeah, like
Go
the
back and rewatch the
freaking,
movie.
you know, the Buzz Lightyear thing.
Uh,
The fact that there
I
was
heard rumblings about it, but I didn't. I
yeah,
wasn't following it too
yeah.
hard.
So the Buzz Lightyear thing was already sort of a thing because everyone was kind of like, why did you only make the gay couple like 2 seconds worth of, you know, visualization? But also like people were still freaking out about the fact that it was even in there in the first place, even though the scene was only 2 seconds. And it's like, fantastic, wonderful, great. I have so much faith in humanity right now. Um, but I also think that it's interesting that Big Hero 6 kind of does toy with the idea of at least Go Go being some kind of queer. It's very, very, like, it's not talked about at all. Never
I
said
feel like
explicitly,
there
but
may be an argument, but you're gonna have to read deep to find it.
yes, she's
I
just
don't
kind
think.
of coded to be like she's coded that way. Like the way her character is designed and the way that she looks and sort of the way that she has been crafted rings of that a little bit, but it's never talked about at all. Um which again, I think artists sometimes take their wins where they can get them. So like if the best that they can do is just like design a character that looks kind of queer and that's all that they can get, like I also understand that as well. Um Something that I also really did appreciate about this movie too is that there wasn't a useless love plot.
Yeah, that was. Now that I think about it, that is true, and I think the
Yeah.
fact that I didn't think about it before goes to how genuinely unneeded any love plot would have been in this movie.
I think a lot of people would agree that a lot of movies and TV shows can go without certain love plots, but this in particular was a movie that did not need any of that anywhere, and I'm glad that they didn't put any of it anywhere. Um, there was I don't want to say there was like room for it, but like I guess there was some kind of opportunity for it, just considering that there were like more than one character, right? Like you have multiple people in a room. Sometimes that's just what happens, right? But they decided not to do that. And I really appreciate it because I think it would have taken away from the movie. I think it still would have been a good movie, even if, like, I don't know, something happened to one of the side characters and they ended up falling in love. I still think it would have been a good movie, even if that was just thrown in at the end. But again, like, I don't know if it was cut out or whatever, but I'm glad it wasn't in the final cut because yeah, would have been not fun having to because I would have
Eh,
said it was useless.
well, yeah, I don't think it would like destroy the movie or anything, but I don't really see where you could have put that and like still make and so have the movie be as like concise and coherent as it is.
Mm.
Uh, and that is actually something that's like really cool about this movie, just how like concise and coherent it is. Right?
Mm.
It's maybe you could argue that's a flaw of it, but it does really get to the point. The plot moves into like very like direct ways. But I think that's part of like the simple fun of it, you know.
Mm-hmm. So, what is your favorite part of this movie? Do you have a favorite like scene or moment at all?
I really love that we talked about it earlier, but that moment where Hiro takes out the Tadashi's programming and has Baymax try to kill Cray. Not Cray, Callahan.
Mm-hmm.
I think that moment is just there's just so many layers to it. What's happening? Like you can really feel like Tadashi, like just like not Tadashi. You can really feel Hiro reprocessing all these emotions and like really having to struggle with what he wants to do with this man who like effectively killed his brother for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like not a justifiable reason, you know, like um it it's just really heartbreaking. And then him coming back from that afterwards when
Mm-hmm.
it's like when he's like talking that moment where the recording of his brother's playing, right? And it's really hitting home how his brother is cares about people, and that's what he wanted Baymax to be. And like Hero rediscovering that that like vengeance here isn't
Mm-hmm.
the way to go, and
Mm-hmm.
that this Baymax is always supposed to be helping people, and like that's kind of like should be the end goal of like
Mm.
what he's doing in technology and like how he wants to live his life.
Mm-hmm.
I found that like really cool and really touching.
It's a very effective movie. With everything that it wants to do and sets out to do, I believe it does. It's a great commentary on loss, grief. It has obviously really, really great examples of friendship and forgiveness. It has, I mean, that scene where, you know, Baymax says, like, Tadashi is here and shows Hiro videos of his brother, right? It's, I mean, that scene breaks, breaks me, dude. But there's such value in moments like that, and all of them were very well written and very well thought out, and I think that was very commendable to all the people who were involved in making that particular version of the script happen, because I think that what they, again, like what they set out to do, they managed to fulfill it to its entirety, and they did it
Hmm.
well. Is
All
there
right,
something about
so
this movie that you would fix?
dang, that's where I was gonna go with this. Okay,
Oh,
you got me.
we are on the same wavelength.
uh, so I don't think there's particularly anything to fix. I don't think there are like problems, but there are things I might have done differently, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Okay, shoot.
Right. I do think the I think Cray kind of they don't really talk too much about like the consequences of Cray's actions
Mm.
because like they're very much more interested in punishing Callahan for all the like the messed up things that he has done.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like Cray just kind of like scoots out of this without much like
Mm.
without much discussion on the fact that like his greed genuinely could have killed like it didn't kill like Callahan's daughter, but it like for all intents and purposes should have,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And it
The
did to
fact that she
Callahan.
survived was a miracle.
Yeah. It did to
Um,
Callahan because he thought his daughter was fully dead, you know, which is why he sets off on this whole revenge scheme. So yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, and like they just after it's revealed that Callahan's the actual villain, they kind of just really don't talk about Cray that much anymore, even though like
Mm.
he genuinely did something like really bad,
Mm-hmm.
and like the thing is Callahan did something bad, but you can kind of understand it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like Kraid is something bad, and it's just bad,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't talk about
Mm.
it.
No, I totally get what you mean. And I think that for sure that would be a critique that I would have. I think that I don't think they spend more time proving Callahan is in the wrong. I do think that they show that he was very emotional and he wasn't in his right mind. And that's what drove him to do these despicable things. And in the end, like we see him getting, you know, escorted into a cop car, right? So
Hmm.
he gets his day of retribution. I just don't know why we didn't see one of Alistair Cray as well. I think that obviously, like, the destruction of his new campus and all of the things that he had sort of worked to create that did get destroyed by the portal in the final battle, I guess, is like some kind of retribution for that as well. But I mean, you could also make the argument that like he's rich enough that something like that doesn't really matter. And I'm hoping that they just didn't do it because they just didn't have the time, or they just thought it was like,
It's also like a tax write-off, good PR, and like probably insurance is gonna cover it.
yeah.
Like I don't think that's a punishment
Yeah.
for him. Being real.
Yeah,
Right?
no.
Like he is not portrayed as someone who's so invested in the advancement of technology that he would actually be sad about like his campus being destroyed. Right? He's someone who's very much about like the finances of it, right? And like if this was modern day America, like there are actually like ways that you can that can be mitigated. I don't think he has suffered like a personal loss rather than just like a financial loss that could possibly be recouped. Right.
Interesting.
His punishment I don't think is like
Yeah. His punishment was not worth the crime. Or the crime was not
yeah.
worth the punishment. Or, yeah, I totally get what you mean. I think that there is, again, there's a value in speaking on that and thinking that, and I think that it would be okay to maybe say that, like, the writers just didn't have it at the forefront of their mind, and, like, Alistair Cray was just a plot device, and he wasn't necessarily a character that we needed to be invested in, but it would have been nice to see him actually suffer some consequences for his actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a more tangible way, because at the end of the day, like, the whole point of this film is to show how being callous and being heartless and being fickle with the value of a human life is very dangerous and is a slippery slope to the path of becoming a villain, right?
Yeah.
And so we see Callahan do that, we see Hero do that, but we never actually see the actual person who managed to, you know, actually hurt somebody in the process of doing that get what they deserve, and that is a little bit disappointing for sure. I think that something that I would lean more towards in changing as well, and this might be, again, a strange thing to say because I know it's supposed to be a hero movie at the end of the day, but and they do cover it, and so this might just be like a useless critique, but I think that it would have been really valuable to see Hero a little bit more in his sadness at random times in the movie, because I think that depression can hit at very inopportune times, and it would have been kind of interesting to see, like, amidst their hero montage where they're like building all their weapons and like becoming these, you know, heroes, that like in the middle of it, Hero kind of conks out a little bit and he's like, I don't know if I can do this, guys. Like, I'm not feeling too
Yeah.
good, kind of thing. Because I think that that's just an accurate representation of how depression works. It really does just hit you at times where you least expect it. And again, I don't think the movie set out to be like, we're gonna depict depression. And like, I understand that. But I do think it would have been very interesting and something that, you know, could be cool to explore just on principle, of, you know, young people dealing with that and it becoming less stigmatized in the media to like not be okay, and also to be okay, because we do see Hero have moments of elation when he's flying through the city with Baymax, and he does seem happy when he's building these, you know, new weapons and gadgets for his friends and stuff, and he seems very much in his element. He seems very excited about getting Baymax his own upgrades as well. And so we see him on the path to recovery, and for the most part, we never really see him have a tough time. Besides, of course, the plot twist where we see Callahan is like the villain, right? And so it's sort of like this smooth trajectory upward, and then it's cut down by the, you know, the second half reveal, and then it sort
Mm-hmm.
of just goes up again after that, and it's like, this is a child who has lost both of his parents and his brother, and he's only 13 or 14.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, we see him like going to classes and like in college, and I'm like, I don't know sad, you
Yeah, I
know?
think that's actually probably the biggest reason why, like, as a depiction of depression, this is not the thing that resonates with me the most.
Yeah.
I think there are other pieces of media that like hit it a lot better, and it's largely because like, um, if there's any way I can like say about this movie, it feels very neat. Everything kind of fits into its scene and like has a very
Yeah.
particular purpose for the plot. It's almost too neat, right? And I think part of the plot, but specifically like how he handles like his depression is like part of uh kind of gets wrapped up in that, where it's just kind of like, oh, okay, um this is just following the steps. It very much feels like that, and I think you're right. Getting a little bit more of like moments in between would be a lot better to like represent that and like really dig into it. But it's also like a children's movie, so like I can kind of understand
Yeah.
why they don't feel the need to like super get into the nuances and like really explore it.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and yeah, and it's like not the point. Like
Yeah.
there are other pieces of media that I would like to bring up later
Yeah.
in the show, in which I do think like tackle this in a much more um, relatable way, in my opinion.
And no, for sure, I was going to end this conversation with like, but it is a Disney movie, and so I can't expect like all that much in the department of like, mental health and let's depict hard things, right? Because it is a kids movie, and I think that for a kids movie, it goes the extra mile where it can. But if this were a perhaps more geared towards an adult audience, I think that there's definitely room there for them to dive into that a little bit more, and how, like, I mean, the irony, of course, is that the hero's journey story beats, right, is that
Hmm.
that's what the Big Hero 6 sort of follows very cleanly, and you were talking
Very
about that,
cleanly.
right? And obviously our main character, his name is Hero, right? Everything fits sort of where it's supposed to, and I don't think that's an accident, and for that to sort of work, he has to have a smooth trajectory upward, so that the second act sort of plot twist can sort of cut him down as much as it possibly can. But of course, it's not meant to be particularly realistic. It's supposed to slot into a larger story and a larger frame. And so, yeah, no, I agree. I think that, again, like, while we can acknowledge that there was room there for something to be done, it wasn't necessary. And I think that this movie is still a masterpiece without that particular thing. There wasn't anything, like, there wasn't a fatal flaw of any sort that I could particularly find in this movie. I think that because it's so well slotted where it needs to be, it doesn't have, again, like a fatal flaw, if you will, of like, this needed to be changed so that it could be better. Like Rent a Girlfriend. I had plenty of those for Rent a Girlfriend.
Okay, so ranking, where would you put this?
Ooh, I think A minus.
A
Yeah,
minus?
I'll put this in an A minus. I love
I was gonna
this. I love this
I was
movie.
gonna put it as a solid A, but
Okay.
you got your harsh critic
I'm
glasses on, I
critical,
guess.
man. I have my harsh critical glasses on for sure. Yes.
I think it's definitely a very solid movie.
Yes, for sure.
Um, but it also doesn't do anything particularly surprising, right? And I
Yeah.
guess my nostalgia glasses also like bias it a bit, but like, um, as opposed to something like Superman, which got we gave an S, right? It's not like doing anything particularly surprising or new with the concept of like heroes, um, other than it's just a very good hero origin story,
Yeah.
right? Which also happens to have like really cool, subtle like racial integration, right? But it doesn't really mix the bag up other than that.
For sure. Did you have a gem of the week, that anything new that I should know about right now?
Man, we skipped so many weeks of this.
We literally
I
did.
got so many. Uh, but if I have to like just pick one, this is not even a gem for you because you already know this. This is a gem for everyone else. The Kaguya-sama manga just ended. Kaguya-sama Loves
Oh,
War.
I'm so
It just
sad.
ended. And if you haven't read or watched it, I highly this is my favorite manga, possibly like piece of art of like all time.
Yes.
I genuinely love this series. It's really fun. It surprisingly has very interesting like social emotional like things to say, but it's also like hilarious at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
which is just great. Like it
Mm-hmm.
gets really deep when it needs to, but also when it wants to be fun, it's just fun.
It is that show. I haven't read the manga, but I did watch the first season of it, and it's fantastic. It is definitely a romance manga that does think a little bit more about women, which in anime is pretty rare. I feel like the female perspective in
I I
anime is
I I don't think
severely
that's true.
lacking.
You're just not looking at the right anime. I,
On the last anime that you recommended me was Rent a Girlfriend, so I don't trust you.
uh, fair. I'll send you some. I'll send you some good stuff later. I'll send you some good stuff later. What about you? What are your gems?
Listen, guys, I'm still traumatized, okay? I'm still traumatized from watching that show. I'm still traumatized from On recommending it to me, and I'm still healing right now. I have a lot of therapy to go to. Um, right now, I. So, House of the Dragon ended, and we have to wait 2 years for the next episode, which is bonkers, and I am in pain, physical pain about that. Um, but I did start rereading the Maze Runner series. And I first read the series when I was in middle school. And so I didn't really like get it. But reading it more as an adult now, that shit's really fucking creepy.
It was interesting. I hated the ending though. The ending of the last book made me so mad.
Yeah, I think because I heard that high schoolers nowadays are like reading The Maze Runner as like a literary book, as like something that has become a classic
Over
in
like
essence.
Percy Jackson. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
I
Percy
know.
Jackson's more
I
of a classic than that.
unfucking believable, but I but I wanted to reread it because I didn't necessarily get the impression that it was all that when I first read it. And so like I wanted to give it another shot, and so far it's actually pretty good. It's holding up. It's holding up for me right now, so we'll
All
see.
right.
I am also in the process of beginning for the very first time ever Neon Genesis Evangelion with my boyfriend.
That's a move.
That is a whole fucking undertaking that I'm gonna have to do, but I'm really excited about it because I've heard really great things about it, and so yeah, there's that as well. So we'll see
That's one of
what's
those
going on.
shows I think that you're gonna have to like sit with and think.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
that's gonna be like a long episode if we ever do one.
Absolutely. And it's gonna be, I mean, we still haven't talked about Devilman Crybaby, but that's an anime that we need to talk about.
We'll add it to the list.
Preferably not sober because that anime fucked me up so bad. Okay, well, we will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening.
Next week, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. Don't
Two
set us up
next
for
weeks.
expectations we can't hit.
Two
Two
next
weeks.
weeks. Apologies. I apologize.
This podcast was produced by Yeji.
It was created and written by both of us.
It was edited by me.
And the cover art was done by my good friend Emma Nebecker.